Hello, hello, hello. I am back again with my acclaimed Monster Arena series. For my last video, I took on all the area Conquest monsters and actually ended up finding it really straightforward and easy. I didn't need to grind at all and sailed through nearly every encounter. The only enemy which gave me any trouble at all was the Vauban, and even for that fight there wasn't a whole lot of strategy involved, it was pretty much just a war of attrition. But I knew not to get too cocky about all that, because while some of the area Conquest monsters certainly do boast some impressive stats and HP levels, they're also the easiest category of monsters at the arena. And that brings me to today's monsters, because now I'm going to be fighting the Species Conquest, 14 monsters in total. Now, although the Species Conquests aren't the toughest that the arena has to offer, they're very formidable, certainly way more of a challenge than the area Conquest beasts. And a couple of monsters here ended up giving me a real headache. Also, while I didn't do any preparatory grinding for fighting the area Conquest, I absolutely did for the enemies in this video, but rest assured, I've got no interest in maxing out anyone's stats, because doing things that way isn't fun, and it's absolutely not necessary. Often when you look up strategies for fighting FF10's hardest enemies and bosses, a lot of people will say, "I'll just level up these stats to 255 and you're golden." Well, I say no, that sucks. For the remaining monsters of the arena, as well as the Dark Aeons I plan to take on afterwards, I'm only going to grind as much as I need to, as opposed to just spending 15 hours maxing everyone out like some 2-pump chump. And so to start off with, I spent a wee bit of time leveling up my dudes at the Omega Ruins to buff them up a tad more. This was especially important to do with Riku because her stats were truly shit, and she'd be providing only a limited benefit if I allowed her to languish, which was not an option now that we're getting closer to the major leagues. As well as taking care of my stats, I had to do some more customization for my armour, because now we're at the point where things need to be getting more optimised. Probably the single most important armour ability in the entire game is Auto Haste. Haste has a really significant effect on the amount of turns your characters get, and so it's nearly mandatory for everyone to have it. As it stood, however, only Tidus actually had it on his armour, and so I had to get it for Riku and Auron's armour too. Only issue was that it costs 80 chocobo wings each time you fix it onto someone's armour, which is a hell of a lot of chocobo wings. Well, I didn't have that many wings, and so I had to find a source. One way to get a lot of them at a time is to bribe the Meishe enemies found in the Omega Ruins, though I was able to easily fight them from the actual monster arena. Bribe might be one of the weirdest and most random abilities in the history of Final Fantasy, but basically it allows you to pay massive amounts of gil to enemies to make them leave the fight, also rewarding you with a ton of a particular item. Different enemies will give you totally different items, and the amount of gil you'll need to pay them will also vary widely depending on their max HP. Now, I'd been saving up for many hours and so had over 2 million gil at this point, so I thought I'd be good to go and got to work at bribing some Meishes. For my first try, I was rewarded with 51 freaking chocobo wings. Pretty damn good, although it did cost me 360,000 gil, a small fortune. Unfortunately, this was still not enough for auto haste for even a single character, and so I went in for round 2, and that's when I remembered that this could happen. Oh, that sucks. Eventually, after bribing enough of these monsters, I was able to customise auto haste onto Auron and Riku, meaning that everyone now had auto haste. But unfortunately, it also left me nearly bankrupt. After this, I did a bit more grinding at the Omega Ruins, partly for more sphere grid levels and partly for some more damn money. See, if you get this encounter on the Omega Ruins with this chest, most of the time it'll contain a Mimic. Beat the Mimic and you'll get 50,000 gil. Combine that with Riku's Gillionaire ability within her God Hand Celestial weapon, and that's 100,000 gil per fight. This is a decent way to make money, but another really great way is to fight various monster arena creations and then sell the fancy equipment they drop. Another armour ability I wanted was Auto Protect to decrease all incoming physical damage, but for that I'd be needing large quantities of light curtains. Relevantly enough, one of the ways you get a bunch of light curtains at a time is by beating the Fafnir species creation. Beating just one will get you 20 light curtains, while beating it with an overkill gets you 40 at a time. So I thought this would make for a good test to see if I can actually beat any species creation at this point, as well as getting loads of light curtains while I do it. So this is how that all went down. Yeah, I couldn't beat it was just too fucking hard. I just got the light curtains by stealing them from the ironclad species creation, which was very dull and repetitive, and I hated it. Eventually though, I did get my light curtains and applied the finishing touches to my armour, filling in the remainder of my free slots. You may have noticed the absence of one particular armour ability, and that's break HP limit. For those who don't know, although the limit for max HP is 9,999, the break HP limit allows you to go over this, and even get as much as 99,999 HP if you really want it. When I played this game as a kid and a teenager, I'd always try and get my party's HP to between 30,000 and 50,000, because I thought you needed to. Well, it turns out you really don't. There's not a single enemy in this game who you can't beat with 9,999 HP. And also, the method for actually getting HP spheres really sucks, because you have to beat the ironclad creation over and over, and this enemy happens to have a lot of HP. And so it was finally time to properly take on my first monster. I worked from the start of the list to the end, though as you'll see, there were a couple of hiccups, but never mind that. Let's get into it. Fenrir is the ultimate wolf enemy, and makes for a very formidable start to the species conquest. It has a whopping 850,000 HP and has a massive amount of agility. As you'll see, one huge difference between the area conquest monsters and the species conquest ones is HP. Gone are the days of nearly everything having around 500,000, because now there's a bunch of monsters with well over 1 million, although there are still some with lower HP levels too. But back to Fenrir, he was quite a pain in the arse. The most common attack I encountered from it was Fangs of Chaos, dealing damage proportional to a character's max HP and also inflicting Confuse. For whatever reason, he almost always used this attack on Orin, and so anytime Orin would get afflicted with it, I'd have to immediately use a remedy on him, which really slowed down the fight a bunch. His other attacks are Fangs of Hell, which causes instant death, and Fangs of Ruin, which just does really high damage. Luckily, Fenrir has no ability to counter-attack, and so whenever someone would die from one of its attacks, Auto Phoenix would just bring them right back. But Fangs of Chaos was way more irritating to deal with, because a confused Orin easily wipes out any of our party members who get in his way. But above all that, by far the biggest nuisance for this fight was how damn hard it was to actually hit the fucking thing. Fenrir has more than decent evasion, and accuracy is one stat where all my members are lacking, so most attacks completely missed. Though when they did hit, they did decent damage at least. Overdrives were extremely handy for this fight because they never actually miss, but after nearly 10 damn minutes I did eventually land the finishing blow on Fenrir, and with a crit no less. That was quite a grueling fight, and I sure hoped that the others wouldn't be too much like that. Because of how grindy the Fenrir fight turned out to be, I decided to go back to the Omega Runes for some more levelling up. While Orin and Tidus received some healthy increases to their stats lately, my main focus was to get Riku stronger, because at the moment she was not pulling her damn weight. This was the last bit of grinding I did for the next few fights, and here are my stats which were now looking a bit more respectable. My next fight was with the Ornitholestes, a lizard enemy. This guy has 800,000 HP, high agility, and unfortunately for me, even higher evasion than Fenrir. I started the fight off with overdrives from all three members, throwing out a banishing blade, a miracle drink mix, and a slice and dice, taking off a good quarter of the monster's health before I had a chance to land a single attack on me. The wee bit of grinding I'd done at the Omega Runes really paid off for this fight, because I was landing way more attacks, getting tons of turns in, and I don't think anyone got knocked out a single time, helped in part by auto protect. The Ornitholestes really didn't have a particularly impressive array of attacks either, to be honest, doing either Poison Touch for some low damage and inflicting poison, who cares, or Drain Touch, which did some decent damage and healed the monster by a little bit. Really nothing dangerous here, and this guy went down in just 3 minutes. Much easier. Next up, we have a fine feathered friend, the Teryx. I wish I could tell you something interesting about this dude, but to my delight, he went down in less than 30 seconds. For whatever reason, the Teryx has just 100,000 HP. It has respectable evasion and defense stats, but none of that mattered because of that crappy HP amount. This is a thing which I found a bit too nonsensical for some of the Species Conquest monsters, if I'm being honest, because a bunch of them have such little HP, whereas some others have way too much. Anyway, we're done here. Although the Hornet doesn't have as much HP as Fenrir or Ornitholestes, it still has way more than the piss poor number that the Teryx has, coming in at a respectable 620,000. Although you might expect an enemy like this to be pretty damn nimble, its evasion stat really isn't up to too much, but it does have plenty of agility to make up for it. The Hornet's attacks revolve around inflicting nasty status effects, with its regular attack causing instant death. Or if you happen to have immunity to that, how about some silence, sleep and darkness. Likewise, Bewitching Stab does some damage and also confuse, always a headache. And Venomous Stab deals poison, as you might have guessed. The Hornet really wasn't much of an issue. Its attacks were easy to deal with, and although it had some nasty status effects, the actual damage it was dealing just wasn't enough to be a problem. Also, Riku happens to have the Ribbon ability on her armour, so things like Confuse, Poison, or pretty much anything else are nothing to worry about for her. Another relatively easy fight here, so on to the next. So it turns out the crappy HP of the Teryx enemy wasn't too anomalous after all, because the Vidatu happens to be even lower at just 95,000. A catch to this, however, is that it has extremely high defense stats and very high evasion. But even so, 95,000 HP just isn't enough for any enemy to stand a chance with my party at this point. One thing I did find kind of funny was when I used Tidus's Slice and Dice overdrive, and it only did about 1,000 damage per attack for some reason. Sometimes overdrives are the most effective tool in your arsenal, but other times you may find that they unexpectedly completely suck. Unfortunately for the Vidatu, I did not allow it to get off a single attack on me, because its agility stat really isn't up to much, and agility really is the single most important stat in this game to stand a chance against anything. And now we have One Eye. Gee, what a fight. Yep, this is one of the two remaining Species Conquest monsters with crappy HP pools, and so it proved to be no challenge at all. If a monster here is going to have such low HP, it should at least have high stats to make up for it, but the One Eye sadly does not, so I didn't get to see any of its wonderful attacks. Unfortunately, my next challenger would not be quite such a pushover. Jumbo Flan, Jumbo Flan, Jumbo Flan. You're a cunt, and I'll tell you why. This enemy is completely immune to physical damage. And I don't mean that as in, oh, it has some really high defense. No, I mean it is literally immune to physical damage. The only way to deal damage to the Jumbo Flan is via overdrives or magic damage. Here's the issue, my magic absolutely sucks. Magic rapidly starts to become redundant as you move through the endgame, and it's almost always better to just hit an enemy with a fast physical attack rather than watch long, extravagant animations for spells like Ultima. Furthermore, there are only two Monster Arena creations where magic is actually necessary, and the Jumbo Flan is one of them. Another very important reason why magic really sucks for the endgame is that if you want to power level your magic stats, you're going to need a lot of magic spheres. Okay, no problem. How do you farm magic spheres? By fighting the Jumbo Flan, that's how. You see the issue? Luckily, I do remember a very handy trick for this enemy, and it involves the use of my favourite Aeon, Anima. See, Anima has a very special attack called Pain, which actually deals non-elemental magic damage, so perfect for this fight. Unfortunately, Yuna was not one of my main party members, so I hadn't been leveling her up, which is a requirement if you want to raise the stats of your Aeons. Despite this, I thought I'd give the fight a go anyway, just to see how it went, and it didn't go well. Anima was only doing a bit over 10,000 damage per Pain attack and got absolutely wrecked by a simple level 3 black magic spell. Also, Anima's HP and stats were generally really crappy. Oh, by the way, did I mention that the Jumbo Flan has 1.3 million HP? Isn't that just great? I decided to give Anima a few abilities like Haste and Shell and then give the fight another go just to see if it made any difference. But no, I got wrecked again. And so I knew I'd need to do some more grinding, this time for Yuna. To prepare, I fought the One Eye a couple of times until it dropped a triple AP weapon for Yuna and ran around the Omega Ruins for a while. After a while of doing this, I had increased Anima's stats by a decent amount, but not really by a huge amount. But I thought that it might be enough, and so went in for round 3 with the Jumbo Flan. Turns out it wasn't enough. At this point, I decided that I'd simply skip the Jumbo Flan for now and return to it at the end, as I was a wee bit sick of grinding. I also decided to do the same for the Nega Elemental, because this enemy is similarly shitty to the Jumbo Flan, although not quite as bad. And so, endeavouring to return to these problematic pests later on, I moved on to the next viable monster. The Tacked is all about strength, defence and speed, and has the potential to pose quite a challenge. Its HP is 800,000 and it is a pure physical powerhouse. Although its agility stat doesn't look too high at first, being just 41, it can really take you by surprise with its rush attack, because this attack is essentially the same as the quick hit attack that the player has access to, making it so that its next turn will come far earlier than the turn indicator in the corner might have you believe. Because of this, the Tacked can do some massive damage to your characters and then follow up with more big hits before you have the chance to recover. Furthermore, this monster has another nasty trick up its sleeve where if you get reduced down to a single party member, it just gets to attack you again and again until you lose, without giving you a single turn, so don't let that happen. But despite its high defense and attack power, it didn't give me a whole lot of trouble. All of my party members were strong enough to survive a single hit from it, which helped massively, and I finished the Tacked off with a slice and dice. Next up was Fafnir, the dickhead who'd nailed me earlier when I was after some light curtains. But things were different now, I was stronger, and I knew that there'd be no repeats of what happened earlier. Oh, well that sucks. Yeah, the Fafnir is just a tough monster. It has 1.1 million HP, it hits like a truck, can chain attacks, and has a set of strong elemental magic attacks that hit all 3 party members for massive damage. I saw absolutely no need to go away and grind for this though, because I knew I could get him, and I knew the perfect solution. I went in for round 2 and hit it with a Banishing Blade and then brought out my trump card, Ultra Null All. Ultra Null All is awesome. For a start, it raises all the stats of all your party members by 5 until they're knocked out, but most helpful for this fight, it also casts Null All on everyone too, meaning that anyone hit with any of the 4 elements will have that damage completely nullified. This instantly meant that I no longer had to fear the Fafnir's most dangerous attack, with it now doing 0 damage. From here it was simply a case of pummeling away until it went down, though it still did manage to take out Tidus a couple of times. But in the end I finally nailed it. Nice. Well, my first attempt at the Sleep Sprout was certainly a humbling experience. Yeah, it has a really shitty counter-attack to any attack, causing big damage and doing a plethora of unpleasant status ailments to your whole party. Although this was clearly going to be an issue, I was emboldened by the fact that it only has a measly 98,000 HP, and so quickly jumped back in. This time I gave everyone Shell to mitigate the damage from its good night counter, meaning that now it only did about 3,000 damage per person instead of around about 8,000. As for the status effects, I was somewhat protected due to Riku having Ribbon, and so whenever Auron and Tidus got hit by status effects, Riku was there to clean up the mess. I'm glad the Sleep Sprout had such low HP, or this could have been a massive pain to fight, especially considering its massive defense, on full display early on, when I tried to use one of Tidus's overdrives which did terrible damage. But, as always, I got it in the end. The Bomb King was a fight which initially seemed like it was going to be another easy one. It has a half decent HP pool, coming in at 480,000, although with very high defense stats, but I noticed I was able to just wail on him without him doing too much back. It did follow that usual bomb shtick, used by all bomb enemies though, growing larger and larger the more I attacked it. Then, just as I must have been really close to killing it, it used Ultima, wiping out my whole party. I wasn't worried about this one though, and I knew I just had to give it another go. This time I gave everyone Shell so that they'd have a much better chance at surviving Ultima, and pulled out my old trusty Ultra Null All again to further raise everyone's stats. This time the Bomb King didn't even get the damn chance to use Ultima, and I managed to take it down before it reached critical mass. Ah, now here is an intimidating monster if ever I saw one. The Juggernaut. This enemy has pretty great defense, high strength and a ton of HP with 1.2 million. Honestly, I was expecting this horned beast to be a real challenge, but it ended up being a piece of piss. Thanks to an early Banishing Blade by Auron, I was able to do great damage on the thing, and thanks to the Juggernaut's underwhelming agility, it only got 2 turns in throughout the whole fight, and one of those turns was just a charging move. When it eventually did unleash its special salvo attack, it did literally no damage because it's fire based, and I'd used Ultra Null All, so nothing to fear. The Juggernaut's appearance and HP may make it seem like it's intimidating, but it's for sure one of the easier Species Conquest monsters, which is not something I can say for this next monster. This monster, the Ironclad, stinks and I don't like it. It has the highest HP of any other Species Conquest monster by far, coming in at a whopping 2 million. What's more is that it has an absolute fuck ton of defense, although this was mitigated somewhat by Auron's Banishing Blade. Worse still, however, is that this monster will counter every one of your attacks with the Rapid doing massive damage to a single target. As well as its dangerous counters, when it does get a turn in of its own, it will sometimes do an AoE attack, doing massive damage to everyone and also draining all their HP as an extra kick in the nuts. Monsters with counter attacks are almost always more dangerous, not to mention tedious, than their non-counter attacking counterparts, and the Ironclad is no exception. That was a hard sentence to get out, by the way. Although this monster wasn't super difficult, it definitely kept me on my toes, and it was a war of attrition before Auron finally landed the finishing blow in the 7th minute. Glory to me! With the Ironclad down, that meant that all the Species Conquest monsters had been beaten, even the mighty Ironclad. Oh fuck. Actually, I still have those 2 left that I skipped earlier, don't I? Fuck. Before going back to the Jumbo Flan, I decided to take on the Nega Elemental first, so that I could save the worst for last. By the way, if you want my opinion, the Nega Elemental is a shitty fight. Like the Jumbo Flan, this monster has massive, and I think unnecessary 1.3 million HP, not to mention great defense. A very unfortunate aspect of the Nega Elemental is the fact that it will counter nearly any of your attacks with the strongest black magic in the game, Ultima. Every damn time. Combine this with its great defense, and with a huge HP pool, and the fact that you have to heal the whole party every time you're hit by Ultima, and you have a long and tedious fight. As strong as its Ultima attack was, with the help of Shell and Ultra Null All, I was consistently able to survive it, and so this entire fight was literally just a loop of attack, get hit by Ultima, heal, and repeat until victory. It took around 12 bloody minutes, and it really wasn't a fun fight at all. If you happen to be a magic user, then the fight isn't that bad because I don't think it uses its counter attack in response to magic damage, but then you've got to sit through the Ultima animation about 20 times anyway, because that is the strongest spell in the game and you'll want to use it. I was glad to get this monster out of the way, but unfortunately the Jumbo Flan awaited. Before taking on the Flan again, I knew I'd need to do some more grinding with Una, because Animus stats simply would not cut it, and so back to the Omega Ruins I went. After I was done, I came back to the arena and decided that I was about ready to take on the Flan once again. I inflicted the monster with slow, brought out Anima, cast Shell and Regen, and then got to work hitting it with Pain. Now, Pain was doing around 30,000 damage per attack, a big improvement to the 10,000 damage per attack that I was doing earlier, but would it be enough? Although Regen helped a bit with the healing, the heals weren't big, and Regen does run out, so when I decided to heal some more, I primarily used Lancet, which acted as a fast and somewhat effective way to keep Anima's HP up. Although the Jumbo Flan hit me with some powerful level 3 magics, as well as things like Flare and Ultima, Anima was able to survive these and heal up straight after. The only issue was the bloody 1.3 million HP that the Flan had, because at this rate I'd need to hit it just over 40 bloody times with Pain. Again, this was a very tedious process, because I had to make sure I was healing up too, and although the Flan was afflicted with slow and Anima had haste, Pain was still a very slow attack. Nonetheless, after just 5 minutes, I knew I was going to win. It was slow, but as long as the Jumbo Flan didn't throw me any nasty curveballs, I knew I had it in the bag. And then it threw me a fucking curveball, and that curveball's name is Regen. The big issue with Regen here was that the Jumbo Flan was now able to heal faster than I could damage it. The actual amount that Regen healed it by was very inconsistent, but on some turns it literally healed it for over 100,000 damage. And that's every single turn, mind you, not just the enemy's turn. Now Regen can be removed by casting Dispel, but the issue was that 1. The Flan simply recast Regen after I Dispel it, and 2. Anima was swiftly running out of MP, and thus after about 20 freaking minutes I had to throw in the towel. Although Anima was in no real danger of being killed, I simply could not outpace the Jumbo Flan's healing, putting me in a state where it was literally impossible to win. And so, once again, for the final time, I returned back to the Omega Ruins and did a whole load more levelling up with Una, and after about an hour, I was finally happy with Animus stats. They were looking a whole lot healthier than before, and I now knew, for real this time, that I could take the Jumbo Flan down for good. And so back to the monster arena I went. Then I fucked up my first attempt because I accidentally cast haste on it, and then annihilated my whole party with Ultima. But we don't need to talk about that. For my true final attempt, I brought out Anima once again, looking far more impressive than before, and things were looking way more encouraging. Pain was now doing 60,000 damage per hit, compared to the 30,000 from before and the 10,000 from before that. Furthermore, Anima now had over 10,000 HP and way more MP. When the Jumbo Flan eventually started casting Regen like before, I simply used this spell, comfortable in the fact that I had more than enough NP to deal with it. And after 9 whole minutes, the Jumbo Flan was turned to jelly. What a long and brutal war that was. And there you have it, folks. The species conquest has been conquered. I had a lot of fun fighting these monsters, but I had to do a bunch of grinding and I died a whole bunch of times. But my work is not done yet, because there is one final set of monsters to be beaten at the monster arena, and these ones are harder than the previous 2 categories put together. But that is for another video. And so, as always, cheers for watching and cheerio.